When we think about architecture, our minds usually jump straight to shelter, a roof over our
A
head.
barrier, yeah.
Exactly, a barrier between us and the world. But the sources we've been digging into today, they suggest that in a place like Jamaica, a place that's always in this constant negotiation with nature,
Hmm.
architecture is something more. It's not just shelter. It becomes this statement of, well, defiance.
It's absolutely a statement, and it's a complicated one, you know? It's forged right there in that tension between our own ingenuity and the, frankly, overwhelming reality of the environment.
And that statement just got seriously stress tested by Hurricane Melissa.
It really did.
Melissa was. I
Yeah.
mean, she was ferocious. The images are tragic, but at the same time, they're incredibly instructive. You see it all.
Yeah, the classic failure points.
Retaining walls just ripped from the hillsides, roofs peeled back like they were made of foil, foundations completely undermined.
And the roadways buckling, the sheer force of it all is hard to comprehend.
But those scenes, as awful as they are, they give us this crucial diagnostic tool.
Exactly. That's the key. They expose every single point of failure. It's where, inadequate engineering met high-velocity physics and physics won,
Right.
and it forces the conversation past just cleaning up the mess and into a real long-term structural evolution.
And yet, what also came out of that wreckage almost immediately was this incredible resilience, this defiance we were talking
The
about.
human element.
Yeah, the sources all mention this song, Jamaica Strong. It basically became the anthem of the recovery.
And it's such a good reminder that strength isn't just measured in, rebar and concrete.
It's measured in the human will to get back up and, more importantly, to rebuild smarter.
And that combination, the material science and that social tenacity, that's really the heart of what we're looking at today.
Okay, so let's unpack all of this. Our mission for this deep dive is to use the vulnerabilities Melissa exposed as a kind of reverse blueprint.
A roadmap of what not to do.
Exactly. We'll look at the specific structural failures, and then we'll explore the evolving designs and the policy solutions that are needed for Jamaica to really build a climate-smart future.
Sounds like a plan.
So, starting with the diagnostics, let's talk about the most visible problem, the roofs. Just gone. Now, when people see that kind of hurricane damage, I think they imagine the wind just pushing down, crushing the roof. But that's not really the physics at play here, is it?
No, not at all. It's actually the opposite. If you look at the aerodynamics of a roof in a hurricane, the primary enemy isn't pressure, it's lift. It's the uplift forces.
So it's more like an airplane wing.
Precisely. As that high-velocity wind flows over the roof, it creates an area of low pressure above it, and you get this massive pressure differential that essentially tries to vacuum the entire structure right off the building. It doesn't push, it pries and rips.
So what were the specific weak points, the technical failures that let those forces win?
Well, the list is depressingly small, but incredibly critical. You see systemic issues like overaged timber trusses.
Right, stuff that's been weakened by termites or just time.
Exactly. But the key failures, the ones that really mattered, were the small, inexpensive details that were either installed wrong or just skipped entirely.
Like what?
We're talking about inadequate hurricane straps. We're talking about corrosion at the fixings. Things like the improper spacing of purlins.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
For our listeners, can you break that down? What is a purlin, and why does how far apart they are matter so much?
Of course. So a purlin is a horizontal beam. It runs along the length of the roof, and it sits on top of the main trusses.
Got it.
Its job is to support the roof sheeting. Now, if you space those purlins too far apart, the sheeting doesn't have enough support to resist that suction from the uplift. It'll start to ripple, and then it'll just tear away.
And when you combine that with missing hurricane straps,
You have a recipe for total failure. Those straps are the metal connectors that literally tie the roof structure to the wall structure. Without them, the roof is just sitting on top of the house, not anchored to it.
So a roof in a place like Jamaica has to be built as a single, completely integrated, stress-tested system.
It has to be. There's no other way.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now, moving from the wind to the water. The other huge failure was the catastrophic collapse of retaining walls all over the island. And this feels less like a sudden event and more like a slow, inevitable loss, like gravity and water just finally won the war.
That's a really good analogy. Jamaica's topography, all the hills and valleys, it demands a deep respect. And the failures we saw came directly from treating these retaining walls as simple barriers or even afterthoughts.
Instead of what they actually are.
which is a highly engineered system. The sources point again and again to a lack of proper drainage.
So water is building up behind the wall.
Immense hydrostatic pressure. And there's this reliance on just sheer mass, big, thick wall, instead of actual internal strength.
When you say internal strength, you mean something like a geogrid. Can you explain the difference between just a massive concrete wall and one that's reinforced with that?
Yeah, it's the difference between brute force and smart engineering. A geogrid is a polymer mesh that you layer horizontally into the soil as you build the wall and backfill it.
Okay.
So as you lay the soil back in, the grid locks the soil mass together. The wall is no longer acting alone. You've essentially reinforced the entire hillside behind it, creating one massive integrated gravity block.
So it can't just be pushed over.
Exactly. A wall built only on mass can be undercut or just pushed over by that water pressure. A geogrid reinforced wall is fundamentally more stable.
And then, of course, the flooding of low-lying homes. This seems to happen with every storm.
Ugh.
But Melissa really drove the lesson home.
It did. The lesson is stark. Water remembers its path, even when humans pave over it and forget where it's supposed to go.
You can't just redirect a natural waterway because it's convenient.
You can't. And even when we build concrete channels, they're often designed for, historical rainfall levels,
Yeah.
not for the kind of hyper-intense downpours we're seeing today.
And all our paved driveways and concrete patios don't help.
They make it so much worse. I mean, every square foot of impermeable surface concrete, asphalt, tile, it stops water from soaking into the ground. That water has to go somewhere.
And it rushes to the lowest point.
Overwhelming the drainage systems and turning streets into flash flood zones. Melissa's lesson here is that our development choices, especially on these huge impermeable surfaces, create their own localized disasters.
That sets a really challenging stage. So if the diagnostics show us where we're failing, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Shifting from analysis to action. It's not about stopping construction. It's about making sure everything new can handle storms that are, let's be honest, steroidal versions of what we saw in the past.
It requires a fundamental shift in materials and methodology, especially given the traditional reliance on concrete block construction.
So we need reinforced concrete, but we need it done right. No shortcut.
Zero shortcuts.
The findings mention higher-grade rebars, engineering certified column spacing, moisture-controlled curing. But one detail really stood out to me. Improved cover depths. Why is that tiny detail so critical?
Because it's not a tiny detail. Cover depth is the amount of concrete between the outer surface and the steel rebar inside.
Right.
If that cover is too shallow, moisture, especially salty, coastal air, gets to the rebar and starts to corrode it. It starts to rust.
And when steel rusts, it expands.
It expands up to 6 times its original volume. And that expansion cracks the concrete from the inside out.
So it's not just a surface problem. It's an internal structural time bomb.
It is. The integrity of the entire structure is compromised long before the next storm even arrives.
The sources also had a really powerful line about timber. Timber doesn't fail. Poor craftsmanship does.
I love that quote. It's so true.
But isn't this kind of high-level, precise craftsmanship, isn't that an economic problem too? Are we seeing a tension between what the building codes say and what people can actually afford?
That is the essential tension, absolutely. Good construction costs more up front, but what the sources argue, very convincingly, is that the cost of repair after storm just dwarfs that initial investment.
So doing it right the first time is actually cheaper.
In the long run, yes. And doing it right means using hurricane straps at every single junction. It means using the correct nail patterns based on actual uplift calculations. Skipping a $50 strap today costs you the entire roof next year.
And then down on the ground, the foundation is the last line of defense. And the success stories from Melissa were all about homes that were designed with the water, not against it.
We saw incredible results with homes built on pier foundations or with deep footings and raised floor slabs.
So the floodwaters just passed underneath.
They cast right underneath or were diverted around the main structure. It's flood-conscious design in action. The home isn't trying to be a submarine. It's designed to let the water flow through its environment without compromising its integrity.
I think this goes back to that quote from Dean Jones in the research.
Yeah, if you design with arrogance, nature will correct you.
If you design with respect, nature will work with you. That really sums it up.
It does. Future homes have to be built with that respect for water's intentions.
Okay, let's pivot up to the literal armor of the house, the shape of the roof. It's not just about how it looks, it's a defense mechanism.
It's absolutely vital, and the hip roof is, without a doubt, the strongest armor against uplift.
Why is that?
It's basically a pyramid. All four slopes deflect wind forces equally. It's aerodynamic, it's stable, and it's proven in hurricane zones all over the world.
What about the more common gable roof, the one that looks like an A-frame?
Beautiful, but so vulnerable.
Hmm.
A gable roof gives the wind this big, flat, vertical surface to catch under the eaves. It creates immense suction,
So they need a lot more reinforcement.
a lot more, especially at the gable ends, to stop them from being peeled open. I mean, you can even do flat roofs now, but the drainage has to be perfect and the edge detailing has to be hurricane rated.
Now, if we connect these specific engineering fixes to the bigger picture, fixing one house seems a bit pointless if the whole hillside it's on fails.
And that's exactly what we saw. The slope failures were some of the most dangerous and deadly events during Melissa.
Which brings us right back to those retaining walls. They can't just be big blocks. They have to be, as one source put it, structural lifelines.
They have to be. And the future for them is engineered systems. It's the geogrid we talked about, but it's also comprehensive weep holes to constantly release that water pressure.
And getting the foundation right.
Proper backfill, engineered footings that go deep into stable ground, yes. And, really importantly, we need to leverage bioengineering.
Bioengineering, you mean?
Yeah.
Using plants.
Exactly. Using terrace slopes with root-strong native plants, like vetiver grass. Their root systems create this living reinforcement, binding the soil together. It's a natural defense against erosion that works with the concrete structure underneath.
This all raises a huge question. If fixing one structure is this complicated, how does a government plan for this new climate reality at scale? It sounds like we need to rethink the entire urban blueprint.
We absolutely do. Planning has to stop treating climate change, which, as the source notes, is not polite and does not negotiate, like some unexpected visitor.
It's the new normal.
It's the new normal. And that means we have to urgently rethink where we even allow people to build.
So restricting development in known floodplains or too close to gully banks.
Precisely. Controlling density in high-risk areas, demanding rigorous drainage calculations for every new subdivision calculations that plan for these hyper-intense storms, not the storms of 50 years ago.
And valuing green space.
And crucially, yes, valuing permeable surfaces and natural buffers, mangroves, forests as essential functional parts of the nation's infrastructure. They aren't just empty land waiting for a building.
Changing where people can and can't live. That sounds like the most politically difficult task of all.
It is. It requires long-term vision over short-term expediency. But if you allow 1,000 homes to be built in a vulnerable area, no amount of engineering later on is going to save that community when the water inevitably comes.
It's so easy to just focus on the physical stuff, the concrete and the steel.
Yeah.
But the source material makes such a powerful case for the intangible infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
That song, Jamaica's Strongest Piece of Unity, Moving as One, that's social resilience.
It's social infrastructure. It's the architecture built from connection, not from materials. And it's what determines how fast a place recovers after the storm passes.
The sources gave some amazing examples of this after Melissa.
Just astonishing. Neighbors clearing major roads by hand, reopening schools in 48 hours.
Sharing generators, sharing water, setting up networks to shelter the elderly.
That speed, that self-organization, that is resilience. It shows the community isn't waiting for help to arrive. They are the help.
They are the first responders.
And the rapid rebuilders. And that social framework shortens the economic recovery time massively.
Which is fascinating, because that brings us to the real estate market. Usually after a disaster this big, you'd expect panic.
Panic selling, speculative land sharks trying to buy up cheap property, yeah.
But the sources say the market showed this remarkable stability.
The market actually acted as a stabilizing force. And that's because the physical damage didn't cause a loss of philosophical faith in the land itself.
What do you mean by that?
Investors didn't pull out, developers reviewed their designs, they didn't retreat. And, crucially, you saw renewed interest from the diaspora who saw this as a catalyst to build better, not a reason to abandon the island.
So why does the land value hold so strong, despite the obvious risk?
It comes down to scarcity and a really deep cultural value. It goes back to that perspective from Dean Jones again. Jamaica's land is sacred, not because it is abundant, but because it is limited and cared for by people who understand its worth.
So when you have that deep sense of stewardship, you don't panic sell.
You double down, you rebuild better, and that core value prevents a market collapse.
So, as you, the listener, are thinking about all this, what does it all mean? This deep dive shows that what's happening is so much more than just reconstruction.
It's a reimagining.
It's Jamaica drafting a whole new architectural manifesto. It's built on resilient homes, intelligent engineering, and climate-responsive planning. A house rebuilt after Melissa isn't just reconstructed, it is completely reimagined.
And that leads to a final thought that's worth mulling over. The source materials list this whole array of online tools, a mortgage calculator, a construction calculator, an affordability
Are
calculator.
these technical planning tools?
Right. And we've established that structural survival now depends on precise, high-grade, and frankly expensive engineering. So the question is, how much does the accessibility of those exact tools and the knowledge to even use them determine whether the average citizen can actually afford to participate in building this climate-smart future?
In other words, can resilience be democratized?
Can it? The cost of building resiliently might be high, but the cost of ignorance is so much higher. And that is knowledge worth exploring.